Well, this is a special day, and I'll tell you why. Because we're back at my rock in the woods, and we haven't been here for a while. And I want to tell you a story from my rock in the woods, but it's not just going to be any story. This is a very, very special story that really means a lot to me. And I hope that you remember this story yourself because maybe it will mean a lot to you someday. And I'll tell you why. It's going to be a one story, but I'm going to tell a bunch of stories. I'm going to tell one today and then a number of other stories, and the stories are all going to be have something in common, something alike, and that is what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about prayers that God answered, times that God answered prayer. I'm going to tell you stories of answered prayer, and a lot of these stories are going to be stories about when your mom or your dad and their brothers and sisters were living at home with us, and so if your daddy is Kyle or Chuck or Dan or Wes, or if your mommy is Holly or Heidi or Hannah or Hope, then these stories are stories about our family, about how God answered prayer. And the one that I think about a lot is it was a time when Kyle and Chuck wanted baseball shoes. They were playing baseball. It was in Fredericktown, Ohio, and my goodness, it was fun to play baseball. They had their little baseball uniforms and they had their practices and they were so excited about it. And they didn't have baseball cleats. They didn't have baseball shoes. They had tennis shoes to play baseball in. When I was a kid, I played baseball in tennis shoes. I couldn't afford cleats, and we never got cleats. But the boys, they were saying that they really want cleats. They don't want to play baseball in basketball shoes. They said, remember, Dad, you said you weren't very good. Maybe that's why. I'm like, no, that's not why. I wasn't all that great. But I said to the boys, well, we don't have the money for baseball cleats. I'm sorry. But you can pray. And when you pray, sometimes what God does is he changes your desires and he really causes you to be content with what you have. Or he gives you something different than what you asked for. But I said, sometimes God can give you exactly what you asked for. He can do whatever he wants to do because God answers prayer when we ask him things. And so the boys began to pray for baseball shoes. Well, a box came from Aunt Jean. Aunt Jean used to send these boxes. She would go to the store and she would shop at the Goodwill store and she would buy clothes. A lot of them, we just didn't use. We took them back to the Goodwill. But every once in a while, a box would have something else in the top, usually some candy, and the kids they loved that. They would grab that candy, and then we would all share that candy. But on this one particular day, a box came, and when they opened it up, you're not going to believe what was in the top of that box. 2 pairs of baseball cleats, and they were like Adidas or Nike or Puma. They were nice name brand baseball cleats, and they were exactly Kyle's size and exactly Chuck's size. And Aunt Jean didn't know those boys' sizes. She just had to guess and send them, and they fit perfectly. And I have a picture, and I will attach it to this if I can, or I'll link to it. I have a picture of Kyle and Chuck when they were little boys living on Bryant Road in Fredericktown, Ohio, and they had their baseball uniforms on, and they had those cleats that we got as an answer to prayer because God answers prayer. So what do you think about that? What are you praying for? What are you asking God for? I'll have another story really soon about an amazing answer to prayer. But think about that for a while. Do you pray all the time and do you ask God for things? Because you should. Because God answers kids' prayers.